Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer here. We talk about music, books, and movies. And today we're going to be doing my first book review with a cat on the table. So, full disclosure, I haven't really read anything in a while, at least not until this year started. I stopped reading in high school and didn't really get back to it until last month, so I didn't read as many books as most booktubers. I only read 3, and here they are. I'll be reviewing these books in order of enjoyment, starting with my least favorite. And before we get started, let me give you guys some statistics. I read 3 books this month, and for my ratings, I gave 1 3-star, 1 4-star, and 1 5-star. The genres I read were 1 thriller, 1 science fiction, and 1 fantasy. And all 3 books were adult books. Now, let's get started with No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. This book is a thriller with elements of neo-western, and it's told from multiple perspectives, and I liked all 3 of the perspectives that it was told from, like the main 3 at least. The 3 characters are Moss, who comes across this drug deal gone wrong and takes some money from it at a price to himself, and then there's the assassin, Sugar, who, if you've seen the movie, you know him as Anton. He is incredibly creepy, and I absolutely love him for it. And then there's the protagonist, Sheriff Bell, who's trying to hunt down the guy who's been committing all those murders that have been going on without realizing it's actually the assassin guy. And it's a pretty interesting book, and the beginning and middle of the book do a great job of building suspense. However, it did have its problems, which is why I'm only giving it a 3 out of 5. The ending kind of dragged. The ending of this book had way too much exposition that could have been spread out throughout the book, I feel like, and I honestly feel like the last few pages could have been cut altogether. And normally that would only bump it down to a 4, but since this is a thriller, and thrillers kind of depend on their ending in order to be good, it drags it down quite a bit. And if you're wondering what I think of Cormac McCarthy's writing style, the lack of punctuation did bother me a bit at first, but eventually I stopped noticing it and I could just enjoy the story for what it was. I recommend this book for the beginning and middle, but don't be surprised if the ending kind of disappoints you. Now for The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. This one's a classic science fiction book. I'd actually read some H.G. Wells when I was younger, namely The Invisible Man and The Time Machine. But I hadn't read this book. Therefore, I decided I'd give it a chance, and let me give you guys a quick trigger warning for this one. This book does contain descriptions of animal cruelty, so if you're squeamish about that, maybe don't pick up this book. Basically, this book is about a guy who becomes stranded on this island, and it comes across this evil doctor who does cruel experiments on animals to make them more human. And it's pretty disturbing, but I mostly like this book. Dr. Moreau was an interesting villain. The writing style was distinctly Victorian without being too complex and flowery. And the concept was certainly interesting. The only reason this got a 4 instead of a 5 is that the protagonist kind of annoyed me. He went from being terrified and running away to trusting people wholeheartedly multiple times. It was like he had no idea what he was doing. Also, he could have gotten out the minute he found out about the vivisection. I get that he's from Victorian times and people weren't as sensitive about animal cruelty back then, but still, seriously, come on. With all that said, I did respect the protagonist more near the end when he started having to make tough decisions. So yeah, I mostly like this book. Highly recommended, along with The Time Machine and The Invisible Man. Now for An Unkindness of Magicians by Cat Howard. This book is about some magicians who live in this unseen world in New York. They can do magic, obviously, and they have every 20 years or so, they have this thing called the Turning, which determines who can own the magical world, and it's basically comprised of a bunch of duels, and some of these duels are fatal while some of them aren't, and there's all these houses. And the book begins with the Turning starting early, and a newcomer who isn't part of any house showing up and entering the Turning. The book is told from multiple perspectives, with nearly every character getting a perspective. Yet somehow it doesn't get confusing. The character dynamics are interesting, the pacing is great, and the plot itself really kept me on the edge of my seat. Unlike the other book I talked about, the ending was also pretty good. I know some people found this book confusing, and I get why, but it didn't really bother me. This book is great, and I give it the highest of recommendations. And this was my January wrap-up. Hopefully I'll get to read more books this month. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.